Okay, the next document in your packet on page 103 is document B, and they are a pair of charts on the accused and the accusers in Salem, Massachusetts. The accused refers to people who were accused of witchcraft, who were said to be bewitched, and the accusers are or would be people who were making the accusations that someone was a witch. A couple of important things to look at before we begin closely studying the document is that this is coming from an article that appeared in these charts rather are coming from an article that appeared in the June 1970 American Historical Review. It is an article by John Demos titled Underlying Themes in the Witchcraft of 17th Century New England. So these charts are going to be coming from an article written by Mr. Demos about 47 years ago in June of 1970. A couple of important content notes before we look at the documents, and you're free to make notes here as you're listening to this on the board and pause the video if you need to as we're going through to jot notes down. A key idea in these charts is that overall young unmarried girls tended to accuse older married women of witchcraft. I'll repeat that. A key idea in these charts is that overall young unmarried girls accused older married women of witchcraft. Another important point is that Mr. Demos tended to be unhappy with the purely psychological explanation of the Salem witch trials that was put forth by many historians before 1970. And Mr. Demos would use quantitative data or statistics. As you can see here in the charts, he would use data as an attempt to make history more scientific. Many of the new social historians of the 1960s had done the same thing, using numbers to try to quantify their findings. However, Mr. Demos does not rely solely on numbers, and in fact, he does see a psychological component to the Salem witch crisis. His numerical analysis, though, is an attempt to recognize patterns in the town in order to understand the inner workings of the people of the time. It's always going to be difficult for the historian to do, to find the inner workings of the people, especially when you're doing it almost 300 years after the events occurred. But Mr. Demos is trying to do this nonetheless. Also, some historians argue that young girls in Puritan New England lived much more restricted lives than boys, and they were more likely to be housebound and in close proximity with women of a generation older. Girls would oftentimes be around both their mothers and their grandmothers for extended periods of time in the home, while the boys tended to be more out of the home in fields or serving as apprentices. And these close quarters, combined with a rigid, restricted lifestyle, may have caused girls to feel a conscious or unconscious resentment of older women. And Demos is suggesting that this resentment of older women might have caused some of the young girls to act out in the way that they did during the witch trials. And finally, while you're looking at document B, both of the charts, and while you're answering the questions below the documents, you might notice a discrepancy in the total number of the accused when they compare the marital status and the age charts. And you might also notice a difference in the accusers chart as well. The reason there is a discrepancy is that data for age is not available for every participant, and many of the documents were lost in a fire during the 19th century. So with all this in mind, the teaching notes that I just provided and the content notes, let's take a look at the questions. And again, the first place you're going to look when answering the document questions is in the document. First question, you're going to look at the accused chart. So you're going to be looking at the top chart, What generalizations can you make about each of the following? And you need to make a generalization about the gender of the accused, the marital status of the accused, and the age of the accused. And you can feel free to pause this video tutorial as you're going through and answering the questions, so you can answer these questions one at a time. Question 2, it's asking you to look at the accuser's chart. And what generalization can you make about each of the following? The gender of the accusers, the marital status of the accusers, and the age of the accusers. Make a generalization, a statement that is going to be applicable for most of the people in the chart. Again, a generalization is a statement that is true for most of the people in the chart. And the third question, why do you think more women than men were involved both as the accused and the accusers? Think about what we've talked about in class. Think about what we've talked about during this Mini-Q exercise. And think about why more women than men were involved both as the accused and the accusers. And finally, question 4 for document B asks, based on this document, what can you say about what caused the Salem witch trial hysteria? Basing your answer to question 4 solely on the document, what can you say about what caused the Salem witch trial hysteria?